You don't have to be embarrassed. You don't have to feel rejection. You can just move on. That's what great salespeople do, is like, they don't take rejection personally. They take it as the next step. They don't take failure as an end to something. They take it as learning. They take it as a step up.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Raving Patients podcast. As you know, I'm your host, Dr. Len Tao. Hope everybody's having a great day, evening, whenever you're or wherever you're listening to this podcast. So today, a little bit different episode. We're having a repeat guest, and I don't have many repeat guests, but I wanted to have this guest on. He just is releasing his third book, and he really doesn't need, I would say, a real introduction. Everybody should know who this person is. We go way back. We were in very much a similar space many years ago when I first got into the review game, and we've remained friends over the years. I want to welcome to the Raving Patients podcast, Fred Joyal. Fred, thanks for joining me today.
Oh, it's my pleasure, Len. It's always great to have these conversations, and hopefully we can bring some solid value to your listeners.
So, Fred, as I said, it is your third book. Your first book was your marketing book. Remind me the name. I have it here. Hold on.
Everything is Marketing.
Everything is Marketing. And
that's
the other one is
book one. The second one is Becoming Remarkable.
Yeah,
and they're marketing books for the dental industry.
So Everything is Marketing was a book that I had recommended to every dentist during my sessions. It was like one of the go-to books for marketing. Fabulous book. The second book I have sitting right here, awesome. It's called Becoming Remarkable. So I have that book here. And here is Fred's new book called Super Bold. So you've got 3 books out now. For those who are listening or watching, at this point when this is released, I will have my second book released. It's a tip book on writing reviews. So we share that. We are both podcasters. We are both authors. So we share that in common here. So why don't you, for those that, and again, I always like to say this, you have to be living under a rock to not know who you are. I think you were an answer to a Jeopardy question, if I remember.
Yes.
Yeah. So you were on TV because of 1-800-DENTIST. So why don't you share with those who may not know who you are a little bit about your background, let people know a little bit about what you do now, because I think things have changed over the years from what you used to do. And then talk a little bit about the book, why you wrote it, why it's different than the other books you wrote. Let's start off with that.
So I'm Fred Joyal. I started 1-800-DENTIST with a good friend of mine way back in 1986. It became the largest dentist referral service in the country. We spent $500 million in advertising over the course of about the 30 years. It still exists, but it shrunk a lot. We sold it about 5 years ago, but it was the loudest voice in dentistry telling people to go to a dentist, but if they don't have one, to call us. And we had a call center, and we would send them out to one of our dentists. And it was a great business, great culture. And I met a lot of amazing dentists, and I learned a lot about consumer patient behavior. And that's a lot of what I wrote about in my first 2 books. I have moved on from that, and I consult with CEOs at this point and on business and personal growth. But over the years, I developed this life skill of boldness coming from a very shy place growing up. And I eventually realized I need to write a book about this. So that's what Super Bold is. It is a book on a systematic way to take yourself from however underconfident or shy you are to as bold as you want to be. And this is really my purpose in life now, is to help as many people be as bold as possible. I'm very passionate about it, very excited about it. And Len, you don't need it. You're like one of the boldest guys I know. You'll try anything, do anything, learn anything, introduce yourself to anybody. A lot of people look at you and are like, how do I be like that? Why is he like that? Right? And it's like, we think people are born that way. Some of them are, but you can learn it. That's the important thing. And when you do, it has a profound impact on your life.
What's really interesting is I was not always like this. I learned, I guess you can say, to be a lot more, I was a very shy kid. I wasn't the most popular kid. I was a business guy. I always say when I was 13 years old, I started the baseball card business. I was making $60,000 a year. I wasn't I wasn't a nerd, but I wasn't a popular kid. I wasn't the most vocal kid. Now it's like I'm very direct. People, I think I've spoken to people and they say, I'm trying to think of the word they describe me. There was a specific, I'll think about it as we go through the podcast, but there was a specific, interesting word someone described me as. But it's interesting. This has become your why, is what you just said. This is your passion. It's your why. It's what you do. But it's your first foray technically outside the dental industry, I guess you can say, because this is for any reader now. Obviously the first two, as you said, was focused on dental, becoming remarkable. Everything is marketing. They were focused on dentists. This is for anybody to read. Any person can read this. They can be in any industry. So you've actually gotten out from underneath your so-called, quote unquote, dental envelope umbrella. And now you're out there for anybody, any business can, or any person can look at this and say, hey, this is something I can now, do. So that's a big change from what you've done in the past.
Yeah. Half of my public speaking now is to the non-dental industry. Certainly this is valuable in the dental industry. I mean, boldness is good in any career, in any lifestyle, or in the quality of your life, regardless of whether it's on the personal side or the career side. But a lot of dentists, they've been so beaten down in dental school that they come out fairly underconfident about in a general sort of way. And then also they're more of the artist engineer personality, which is not necessarily outgoing. There's a lot more introverts in dentistry than there are extroverts. But you became an extrovert. Which is great, which is what I did, and that's what I said. I got to compress this so somebody can learn it quickly. Because what you did is you just pushed your way into your discomfort zone over and over again till you got comfortable, right? You just became determined to do it.
Exactly. And it's something the title, by the way, is Super Bold: From Underconfident to Charismatic in 90 Days. And if we take a direct correlation to the dental industry here, case acceptance, which I'm very passionate about. Obviously, I'm passionate about reviews, but I've become passionate about case acceptance because I'm very good at it and getting patients to say yes. The dentists who struggle with case acceptance, it's all about confidence. If you're not confident in what you're presenting, patients are not going to say yes, and they're going to walk out and find someone else who is confident. So, throughout I'm an excellent salesperson. I've always been into sales, obviously since I was 13, like I said. So sales has always been easy for me. And, when you're good at sales, you're usually a very confident person. So I think that's a big, big difference from someone who is able to get people to say yes is because they're confident. So I think one thing I can tell you is if you're not confident, or not someone who has great case acceptance, I think if you can read, his book, Fred, I think you'd agree that this could help people with case acceptance if they read your book. Would you say that's a good transition there?
Absolutely. It's one of the things that requires boldness and confidence to present comprehensive care. But there's a whole bunch of dentists who are locked into just doing the dentistry that the insurance covers, right? I'm going to make up a statistic and you're going to try to validate it for me. I would say 80% of dentists are uncomfortable presenting a case greater than $10,000. Would you say that's accurate? 80% really have a lot of trouble going over 10 grand.
Yeah, and you know why that is? The biggest reason why is they think the patient is going to say it's too expensive and they're concerned about the price of everything. And I'm a little bit different. Your typical dentist does not present finances, and they very rarely present treatment options. They have a treatment coordinator and a financial coordinator. In my case, I always did that in my office. I've always been good at it. I've been a salesperson, so I never gave up those duties. I was the person that discussed finances, and I was the person to discuss treatment options with the patient. And I got them across the line, as we like to call it, much better than most people did. So I went against the grain, a little bit different than what the gurus said, the consultants out there, and I did it myself. Now, I have been asked to teach those things because it's not the norm. Okay. So I have classes now called the Art of the Sale and Art of Dental Financing, because that's what I'm very good at teaching dentists how to do, is to sell dentistry. So, I understand exactly what you're saying here. Now, I want to go into some specific things here. And, your speaking point number one that you want to talk about was that boldness can be learned. And I told you I was not somebody who was very bold as a kid. I was shy. I was an introvert. Obviously, over time, somebody can learn how to become bold. So can you talk about that as something that they're going to learn in the book?
Yeah. So what I've created is a step-by-step method. I call it the PRIDE method which is an acronym for the 5 steps that you would use to do boldness exercises, to build up your boldness muscle, to build up your confidence in situations where it doesn't matter, or where you have to teach yourself that it doesn't matter, so that when it does matter, you can summon the boldness that you want. That's really what I define super bold as, which is you can call on your boldness whenever you need it, however challenging or uncomfortable you feel like you might be, or out of your normal capability zone. You want to be able to summon that. So the steps are preparation, relaxing, insight, dosage, controlling the dosage and intensity of the exercise, and everyday action, doing exercises every day. And the book has 5 levels of exercise that start really simple, really basic, to teach you to be outgoing and to reinforce that. And you'll actually build neural pathways that do it. Because I think, Len, you're at a point now where your neural pathway is, your reflex is to approach situations with confidence and boldness. You have atrophied your shyness, right? Which is what can happen, which is, and this, what I'm doing is I'm creating exercises that you're going to do every day that are going to compress that experience. I mean, you're going to build it the rest of your life, but you're going to go, wow, I can do this. I can step up to this situation. Now, as a dentist, you want to be really good at asking for reviews. I know a whole bunch of dentists who can't even ask their patient if they would review them, because it's like, oh, I don't want to, I don't want, they can't get the words out. It's like, that's how you're going to build your practice. You're going to be, so, which is why Len has a business, is because he's developed the technology so that you don't have to speak up as much, but it still helps to speak up. You want to be able to give feedback to your team and accept feedback. That takes boldness. You can't just be unclear or silent about your expectations with your team, or you're not going to have a powerful and productive team that knows exactly what they're supposed to do or how they can get better. I mean, it affects everything in your life. So you got to prepare. You got to prepare what you're going to say. You're going to relax yourself, which there are techniques that I talk about in the book, very simply how to relax yourself. Because a bunch of people go like, you just need to just relax. And you go, wait, do I look nervous? Now you're twice as nervous because somebody noticed that you're nervous, right? So when you do these techniques to relax yourself, which are very simple, it goes the other way. You go, oh, I can relax myself, so now I'm gonna be more relaxed. You want to be like, when you speak, Len, when you're on stage, you just bring the full Len. You're fully energized. You're not nervous. You're feeling the energy of being in front of an audience. So they get the full you with a clear head, and you say what you want to say, and you say it with passion and clarity. And that's all you need to do, is learn to relax so that you can do that. Then you want to have insights. And a lot of the book talks about the mindset you need to get you towards confidence and boldness. One of those things is that people aren't thinking about you anywhere near as much as you think they are. They're thinking about themselves. So you're worrying about all these strangers' opinions that are, one, very casual and very fleeting, and two, do they really know you? If somebody in my audience thinks I'm an idiot, am I going to take that on? Because do they really know me based on one lecture or one thing I said in a lecture that they decide I'm an idiot, right? So why would I take that on? There's 5 people in the world whose opinions I take full face value 100%. Everybody else is at the other end of the spectrum. And why would they? Why would a complete stranger's opinion about you matter? What are people going to think? It's like, what do you care? So that's a couple of the insights. The other insight is that what bold people know, when you're bold, and I think you learned this early on as you became a salesperson, is nothing bad actually happens, right? Unless you decide to label it as bad. You don't have to be embarrassed. You don't have to feel rejection. You can just move on. That's what great salespeople do, is like, they don't take rejection personally. They take it as the next step. They don't take failure as an end to something. They take it as learning. They take it as a step up. When you can start to realize that, and a lot of the exercises are to teach people that 99% of the time, nothing bad happens. What underconfident people are great at is figuring out the worst thing that could happen. And what they're terrible at is figuring out what the odds are of that actually happening. And bold people just go, whatever happens, I'll deal with it. I'll grow with it. I'll have fun with it. Next step is dosage, controlling. So we get PRID, preparation, relaxing, insight, dosage, control the intensity of the experience of moving out of your comfort zone to so you don't go too deep into it. If you're trying to figure out how to meet people, don't go to a party of 100 people where you don't know anybody and they all work in a different profession than you. Don't start there. You're going to overdose yourself and you're going to retreat back into your shell. You're going to go to 5 people, just like, learning to speak. You go to Toastmasters. It's a room full of people all rooting for you to get better. So that's and the exercises are all about dosage. They will increase the intensity of the experience as you can handle it. And then the real key is to do something every day, to always be working on your boldness. Don't go to bed without having done some boldness exercise every single day. And the exercises start as simple as smile at 5 people a day. Then you'll move up to introduce yourself to 5 people a day. And you're going to aim for failure. You're going to aim for, like, they didn't smile back and I'm not taking it on personally, right? Because you don't know what kind of headspace people are in. I do this all the time when I'll say hi to people. They don't say hi back. I don't have to go slit my wrists. They could be having the worst day of their life and they don't need my happy attitude, right? But most people are really happy for somebody to say hi to them and they're surprised. One thing I always do now, Len, if I'm in an elevator, I'm talking to everybody, right? Because nobody does, except in Australia, right? For some crazy reason, they all talk to each other. They get in an elevator and they just start chatting. But
interesting.
In the rest of the world, you can get in an elevator and everybody's happy to talk. It's like there's like some law that you're supposed to get in an elevator and shut up, right? And so I don't do it. In my boldness exercises, I'm going to compliment somebody, or I'm going to say something about the elevator or the building or anything.
I think it's taking someone out of their comfort level. I think it's getting them to where they're uncomfortable, getting them more comfortable when they're not comfortable. I think that has a lot to do with what you're talking about here. I relate to everything you said. Now, I think becoming a bolder person, and I think we touched on it very briefly in the beginning, but becoming a bolder person leads someone to have greater success as a dentist and as a practice owner. And I think that has a lot to do with what I want to talk about. One of the things I mentioned is obviously being more confident, being more bolder, you'll get greater case acceptance. What other ways do you think being bolder can lead to more success as a dentist, and then even more so as a practice owner themselves?
Well, it takes boldness to say, look, I'm going to start to do, let's say you're a GP, say, I'm going to start to do implants myself. I'm going to do single tooth implants myself. I'm going to get the technology. So you got to be bold enough to invest in that technology, and then bold enough not to quit after the first 2 failures, which is what a lot of dentists do. They'll buy $150,000 laser, use it once, the patient jumps, and they're done. They park it, right? Instead of saying, I need to learn. I need to learn how to use this device. And then I need to tell the patients why it's so great. I want dentists to brag about how good dentistry is. Okay. The first point I make in becoming remarkable is this idea that dentistry is a great investment. It is one of the best investments people can make. If you don't communicate that, you don't have to believe it. It's already true. You cannot believe it, but you're believing something that's wrong. If somebody needs $20,000 of dentistry, there's no better way to spend that money that's going to have greater impact on their life. That's the reality. So you just have to be confident enough to tell the truth and confident enough to do your actual professional responsibility, which is to tell people what they need, not what the insurance company wants to pay for. So all of this stuff takes boldness. It takes boldness to learn new technologies. It takes boldness to tell your a practice. is how enthusiastic that team is. And it just takes boldness to give criticism to your team members in an effective way, rather than wait till it, when you're not bold, you wait till it builds up so much that you explode and go like, you are always late. If you're late one more time, I'm going to fire you. Instead of saying, when you're late, throws the whole schedule off. Can you help me understand why it's so hard for you to get in here, and what can we do about it?
Gotcha. So I think the boldness makes a better leader as well. And when you're a better leader and bolder leader, I think, and I as many of the listeners know, I sold my practice October 1st. So I'm really just a worker bee in my office, or what used to be my office. I'm still traveling up there to see patients. The team and even the new owner still looks at me for advice on ownership, and what they would do, because I did it for 15 years. But I think a lot of people and you described it in that confrontation with the team member just now about, running late. I think a lot of business owners are concerned and scared of confrontation. And when they come across that way or come across wrong, they're going to have a team member who's unhappy to be there. So I think that has a lot to do with it as well. So I think a good moral from this is that becoming a bolder person can probably make you become a better leader, which in turn can run a more successful practice.
And, the other thing that I talk about, and let's go a little bit beyond dentistry, is, to me, the most important thing is to have the boldness when it matters most. And it may be that you need to stand up to somebody, or stand up for somebody, or for something. You don't want to sit back and say, oh, well, I'm going to let them deal with it, or I'm not going to be the one. Like some people, they're afraid to offer their arm to help an old lady walk across the street. It's like, oh, well, somebody will do it, or she may not want me. It's like, my arm comes right out. I walk right up and say, would you like some help? But okay, let's talk about bigger things than that. Okay. When your best friend passes away and people say, do you want to say something at the funeral? And you go, oh, well, I really don't like speaking in front of people. I really hate it. I hate it. So I'm not going to say anything. Really? You're not going to get up and say anything about your relationship with your best friend. That's an opportunity you're going to miss and regret for the rest of your life.
Well, it's funny you brought that up, by the way. So my mom passed away 16 years ago. Okay. Just shy November 15th was 16 years ago. And I was asked to do a eulogy for her. And at that point in my life, I was not a public speaker. So what people don't know about me is I was a terrible public speaker. Horrible. But it was something that I learned how to be, was a much better public speaker. And now I speak, I've spoken over 400 times. Okay. So my dad, who's a dentist, my dad was a big, person who was very influential in my life. He passed away in June of this year. Okay. And he was very influential in me becoming a speaker, because he told me that I can do it. And I said during his eulogy, and I alluded to during the eulogy for my dad, that 15 years ago, I was actually eulogized my mom, and I did not take the opportunity to do that. Now, 15 years later, I'm going to take the opportunity to eulogize my dad, because he believed in me. And I think Jim Valvano said, the greatest gift a father can give someone is that he believed in me. And my dad believed in me, and he believed that I can be a great speaker. And that's why I was able to do that. So, but you just alluded to that. I regretted not taking advantage of the opportunity to eulogize my mom, simply because I was not a good public speaker and I didn't feel comfortable in front of a large audience. I learned to do that. I mean, I speak to thousands of people a year now, as you're aware of. And as you said, I don't get nervous up there. I know my contents. So very interesting that you just mentioned that.
Yeah, I mean, because I want it to be to think about in your life those moments that you regret. I don't want people living a life of regret, whether it's a big opportunity or a small opportunity or a business opportunity or a very personal thing. One of the things I did, I had an old friend who was like a mentor to me, especially in my teen years and my early youth. And he was trapped in a nursing home. And I wrote what I would have said I was going to say at his funeral, which was impending. And I wrote it and I gave it to him. I had it written up, and his daughter laminated it, and he read it every day. some people go like, oh, you don't want to do that. That's morbid. It's like, you don't think he knows he's going to die? You don't think he would like to know how you feel about him and the impact you've had on your life? There's so many people in the world that have probably impacted you, and you have not expressed appreciation because you go like, oh, I'll get around to it. Guess what? You may not get around to it because you may not get a chance to get around to it. So think about those moments you had opportunities and you missed out on. You didn't step up or speak up or act. That's what I want to get rid of. So you don't have at the end of your life a stack of those. You're going to have some, but I want to eliminate as much as possible. And my final thought on this is like, I don't want on my tombstone to say he played it as safe as possible, right? I wanted the opposite. He was always pushing his limits. He was always trying new stuff, and I left it all on the mat. That's the way I want to approach life. And I encourage people to do the same.
Gotcha. No, that makes a lot of sense. So one of the things we mentioned briefly was communicating with the team. And I think as a owner or a dentist in the practice, you have to communicate with obviously multiple people. I'm sorry. So what are some ways that the listeners and viewers can actually enhance the communication that they have with their team, or the communication the teams can have with themselves? I guess that's a better way of putting it as well.
One of the great life skills is to, when you're talking to somebody, to make them feel like they're the most interesting person in the room. And I've watched very successful people who are just really good at this. People who shouldn't even be paying attention to you, they're doing it, and they lock right on you. And it's really simple. You maintain eye contact. You don't look around for who else you might be talking to, or look down because you're too shy. You look at them. You listen to them. You learn their name. Ask questions. I've been in situations where people thought I was the most interesting person that they met. And you know why? All I did was ask them questions about themselves. They didn't learn a damn thing about me, but I was interested in them, and that made me interesting. Be interested, be curious about people, open that up in yourself. And it takes boldness to say, I'm only comfortable if I'm just talking about me. I'm afraid to ask them things or learn about them. I may get into a sensitive area or something like that, or I don't want to feel confrontational or too imposing. No, be curious and learn to talk to people. Be curious about what's going on in your patients' lives. There is very few things in life that are more personal than a dental appointment, than as a patient from that experience, right? So when you're good at connecting to that person and being curious about them as a human being, it changes everything. It changes case acceptance, certainly. It changes whether they're going to refer to you or not. It actually changes their comfort level and the ease at which you're going to be able to do the case. You're going to be able to do the treatment because they're trusting you because they get that you care about them. And you may care completely about them, but if you're not effectively communicating it, they don't know. They're assuming you don't care. And there's a whole bunch of shy people that people think are arrogant or aloof or cold. And it's just because they don't know how to communicate. They're very caring, empathetic people. They just can't get it out.
Gotcha. So I was skimming the book that you sent over to me. And one of the things I wanted to, and it's not on the list of the speaking points here, so I'm sorry to throw it in your face here, but I figured, I always like to take the opposite approach. So I know that you had one of your chapters, and I have a section in my upcoming book are things, you don't want to do, like the opposites. So, there were a few things that you listed in the, what not to do section. Can you just review a couple of those things very, very briefly with the listeners and viewers? Because I'm sure that there's things on there that people do all the time that you don't want to do.
Yeah. Well, the one thing I always try to point out to people is a lot of people, when they're shy, they're not shy. They behave in a shy way. They're not always shy. They're not shy with their family. They're not shy with their friends. They're shy in certain situations. So it's a behavior, which means you can change it. It's not a genetic thing. So what a lot of people do when they're shy and they finally get into a conversation and somebody lets them talk, they monologue. They go on because the floodgates come out. They can't stop. And they don't give you a break. They don't give you a moment to give them, yeah, that sounds great. Or do you mind if I interject or anything? At a certain point, the person's losing interest because nobody's interesting in an unbroken stream for 10 minutes. You and I, even when we're lecturing, we're going to break up what we present every 10 minutes or so. I'm showing a funny video or a funny picture or just changing the subject or asking the audience a question or something like that, breaking it up. But so the monologuing, really bad habit. The second you catch yourself doing it, you need to stop and you need to say, I'm really excited about this, but so that's why I'm talking about it so much. But I need that, tell me about that trip to Rome that you went to. I'm really interested in that. Immediately ask a question of them and shut the heck up. That's one of the things. The other thing, bad habit that people do, especially in early conversations, is they play top this. Okay. Somebody says, oh, I just went to Rome. It was great. I love the food there. And they go, and the immediate response is, oh, yeah, I was in Rome in 1997. I saw the Rolling Stones. I had a backstage pass. I got pictures with Mick Jagger. It's like, where's this conversation go from there? You've like topped everything. They thought they loved going to Rome. They realized they didn't have that good a time. So instead of playing top this, go, what was the most interesting thing you did in Rome? What was your favorite restaurant? Ask questions. Be curious. Stop blabbing about yourself and how interesting your life is, like your Facebook posts are that show the life that the most marvelous life that you have, even though you have a regular life like everybody else.
Yeah. The other one I liked a lot was don't be a know-it-all, because that's a very common thing.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, some people have an irresistible urge to correct unimportant information. I was just listening to this podcast of these guys. It's a fabulous podcast, the All In podcast. It's these 4 billionaires. And one guy said, the company sold for $1.5 billion. And the other guy immediately jumps in and goes, 1.7. Right?
It matters.
It matters. Like we're writing down what the amount was. No, but it's like, that's what happens when you, like a lot of people, they know stuff. They got to check, they got to correct your grammar, your pronunciation, or any fact. And it's like, you know what? The number of times I let things go, you know what? Because it doesn't matter. And it doesn't endear you to anybody to correct them, especially in front of people. It doesn't endear you alone, but you do it in front of 3 or 4 people and say, oh, no. You think the capital of Pennsylvania is Philadelphia. That's wrong. It's Harrison or whatever the heck. Harrisburg, right. It's Harrisburg. No, they gotta come in with the facts. You know what? You're not making friends. You're not influencing people.
Gotcha. In regards to the book itself, before we get into the little pod decks section, but in regards to the book itself, is there anything else you wanted to mention to the listeners and viewers to get them excited about potentially, picking up a copy of it?
Okay, so this is a book about doing stuff. This isn't a book just to read. So you're going to have exercises and you're going to keep a journal on what happened in those exercises. And it's going to be a little challenging, but it's going to be fun because you move up at your own pace. I'm saying 90 days because you could plow through these things in 90 days and transform yourself, but you go at your own pace. Now it's in hardcover, but it's also in Kindle and Audible. So you can get it on Amazon either way. But if you're going to read it in a digital form or listen to it, go to fredjoyal.com, download a PDF of the exercises and the journal so that you have physical forms of that. And then you can also download the first chapter of the book there on fredjoyal.com. But I want you to have the exercises like in your hands so that you can refer to them and then make notes on what you did and how it went and how you would do it differently and how you're going to step up. People are going to go like, why are you doing this? It's like, I want to be more confident. I want to be more bold. That's why. And they go like, well, maybe I want to be. I've had really good friends who are reading the book and they say, I thought it was really bold till I read the book. I can be a lot bolder. I'm going to try all sorts of stuff. So it's whatever age you are. I've had a 70-year-old friend who said, look, I don't know why the heck I'm retired. I love coaching football. I'm going to find a way to go back and coach football. He was a career high school football coach. And I had a 16-year-old who had attempted suicide. And he started reading the book and he just sort of went like, why am I letting all of these teenage opinions? It's very hard to be a teenager these days with social media. And of course, emotionally, like you fall in love and break up and it's like, you want to kill yourself, right? It's like, it's everything's so intense, right? And the book just helped him to see like there's a whole world out there of opportunity and fun and that he can approach life from a whole different way, bolder and more confidently, and attract people to him. So whatever age you're at, I think, and whatever career you're in, I think you're going to find value in it.
Gotcha. That's great. So before we give them information on how to get a copy or get a copy on Amazon or hard copy, I want to switch gears to the section of the podcast that it's called Pod Decks. I asked the guest 10 questions from one of these decks of where it's no longer cards, there's apps on the phone, because Fred is kind of a business guy. I'm going to choose the business deck. So Fred, first question. These are lightning round. You don't have to go into anything specific details. What has been your most satisfying moment in business?
The best day probably for me was the last week I was at work. And every month we celebrated birthdays and work anniversaries. My last week there, we celebrated 3 25-year employees and a 10-year employee all in the same month. And that spoke so much to the culture that my partner Gary and I created, and that people that had stayed there that long and built a life. So that was the best day.
That's great. Yeah. How do you define success?
I define it by the most impact that you have on the most people.
Okay. Who has been your greatest inspiration?
The guy I dedicated the book to, Robert D., who is also the guy I was talking about that I wrote his eulogy ahead of time. He really taught me to believe in myself and how to behave like a gentleman in many situations. I was pretty rough around the edges, and he would very gently grind those edges off me. And that made all the difference in my personal life and my business life. So and I've been blessed with, a dozen really good mentors at least over the years, but he at that critical time in my life made a tremendous difference.
Okay. Describe Mondays for you in one word.
Caffeinated.
Okay. All right. If you were to do your venture again, what would you do differently?
I would never have licensed it to anyone. I sub-licensed a couple of territories, and I eventually had to bring them back because I couldn't keep them conforming to our standard.
So it was like franchise almost.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you have a favorite business podcast?
Yeah, the All In podcast.
What is one thing you will never give up on?
Love.
Okay. What methods do you use to keep you focused?
Eliminate all distraction, 100%. If I want to really work on something important, everything's off. No notifications, no phone, no nothing. Nothing I'm going to check. I'm on one screen, or I'm on one conversation with somebody, and nothing and no one can get at me during that time. And you will be remarkably more productive. The difference between 80% undistracted and 100% undistracted is not 20%. It's like 5x.
And that's funny because the next question is, what distracts you the most every day? It's very funny you said that. That's a random question.
The primary distraction is email, because I have so many different enterprises and individuals that I'm involved in, and I'm so public that a certain amount of stuff comes at me, and it's so hard to sort through and separate what's important from moderately important to irrelevant. to noise.
Okay. What book have you read 3 times?
Lonesome Dove.
Okay.
By Larry McMurtry. So it's a novel. If it were a business book, Good to Great.
Good to Great. Okay. Do you keep a journal, and does it help you?
I do 2 things. I have a what I call a 5-minute journal that I do every morning and every night. I start with 3 gratitudes, 3 things that are important to get to today, and 5 affirmations. And that's how I start my day, with that. And it's written in this book, and it's actually called the 5-minute journal. And at the end of the day, I write 3 amazing things that happen and 1 thing that I could have done differently that would have made the day better. And then occasionally, when actually there's 3 things. If I have a great moment in my life, that goes into a separate journal. Great moments, and it could be very personal, very simple, or it could be a big business occurrence or whatever. Like the book is out. My book came out October 12th. It's like, that's a great moment. So I have that. And then and sometimes I just journal. Occasionally, it's probably every couple of weeks, or sometimes a month goes by, I start to just journal, and I review the month, and I just work through stuff. So I approach it 3 ways.
All right. Last question. What do you think your unique skill is that has helped you become successful?
I can convince people to do stuff I'm not even sure of myself. So persuasion.
Persuasion. Okay. All right. That was awesome. Thank you for that. That was really good information. I felt it was better than, would you like peanut butter or jelly? Which, much better information than that. Okay. So Fred, people want a copy of the book. How do they go about getting one?
Go to Amazon. If they use Barnes and Noble and stuff like that, there's a digital version there, but it's the Audible version is there, and the Kindle version is there, or the hardcover is there. And I've tried to price everything as low as possible. So because I more want people to read it. I'm not trying to get rich on the books. I'm interested in doing keynotes and coaching and stuff like that. And that's more where my income comes from. I want this book in as many people's. I want millions of people to become more bold, because we got, it's a world with big problems. We need people who are willing to step up and try to solve some of these big problems and believe they can do it. So, and you can go to fredjoyal.com, download the first chapter, and then there's a button you can click, and it goes straight into the Amazon page for the book too.
And it's 99 cents on Amazon, correct?
Depending on when this comes out, it'll probably be, the Kindle version will probably be 99 cents through February.
February. Okay. Yeah. Because as we're recording this, it's 99 cents. I don't know how long that's going to last for. So, and then Fred, if anybody has any questions or wants to find out, talk to you about various different things they're involved with, what's the best way they can get in touch with you?
Fred@fredjoyal.com is the easiest email. If you actually say, look, I'm really, I'm in business and I'm really shy, and I know I'm a CEO or I'm an executive, and I know I got to get over this. Could you talk to me a little bit about it? You can actually go to my website and book a half-hour conversation with me right there, and we'll talk about it. I'll jumpstart you, and then of course it's going to lead to doing the stuff with the book. But we can have a very effective conversation about it. You can tell me what's holding you back, and I'll tell you why it's not working for you and how you get out of it.
And for those interested in your podcast, what's it called?
The podcast it'll be launched by the time this comes out. It'll be the Super Bold Podcast. So
the Super Bold Podcast. All right. Well, Fred, this was great content, great information for the listeners and viewers. Guys, if you want to contact Fred, you have his information. Please reach out to him. If you want a copy of his book, Kindle has it, hardcover available. Kindle version, obviously, you can get on Amazon. If you like the episode, please share it. Please, subscribe to the podcast. As you know, episodes come out Friday at 1 p.m. As I was actually recording this, it's a Friday. One of the episodes launched. It came up on my iPhone that it launched. So Friday at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, they come out. Please subscribe to get the latest episodes. Fred, thank you so much for sharing your expertise, your thoughts, your ideas. It's always great to hear what you have to say out there. I appreciate you joining me, and and sharing your information with the audience and viewers.
I appreciate you having me on and getting to communicate these things. You do a great job of getting really solid information out to people. So I'm very appreciative of this.
Well, I appreciate that as well. And as I always like to end these podcasts, and we didn't talk about it, but we're both review guys. Remember, your reputation matters. Until the next episode, have a great day.